What if I told you that the moment wrestling fans have been holding their breath for the moment that could redefine the entire landscape of WWE just happened? Not in a promo package. Not in a carefully scripted segment that was telegraphed weeks in advance. No. This happened raw, unfiltered, and absolutely electric. Roman Reigns walked back through that curtain and CM Punk was standing right there waiting for him. Buckle up, because what went down after Elimination Chamber is the kind of wrestling television that people are going to be talking about for years. Stay with me, because every single second of this video is worth your time. Welcome back to Wrestling Impact, the channel where we break down every moment, every emotion, and every consequence in professional wrestling. If you are new here, hit that subscribe button right now, because you picked the perfect day to find us. And if you have been riding with us, you already knew this video was coming. Let's get into it. To understand why Roman Reigns' return hit the way it did, you have to understand what Elimination Chamber actually meant going into it. This was not just a pay-per-view. This was a pressure cooker. The chamber itself, that unforgiving steel structure, those cold pods, the sound of 6 men locked inside knowing only one walks out standing, it carries a weight that few events in wrestling can match. And this particular chamber had stakes layered on top of stakes, because the shadow of WrestleMania was looming over every single match on the card. CM Punk went into Elimination Chamber as one of the most compelling figures in all of professional wrestling, the Second City Saint, the voice of the voiceless, the man who made an entire generation fall back in love with this industry. But Punk was carrying something heavier than a championship opportunity into that event. He was carrying an unfinished story. And every wrestling fan worth their salt knew that the final chapter of that story had a very specific name attached to it: Roman Reigns. See, the beauty of great professional wrestling storytelling is that it rewards patience. It teases you. It pulls you toward a destination, lets you feel like you're almost there, and then yanks the rug out just enough to make the eventual arrival feel monumental. That is exactly what WWE had been doing with the Punk and Reigns dynamic. Every time the two men were on the same show, there was electricity. Not the manufactured kind. The real kind that makes the hair on your arm stand up when a live crowd senses something is genuinely happening in front of them. Punk's performance at Elimination Chamber was extraordinary. Watch how he moves inside that structure. It's not just athleticism, it's chess. CM Punk doesn't just wrestle opponents, he dismantles them psychologically before he even throws the first strike. He studies weakness the way a surgeon studies anatomy. Inside the chamber, under those brutal conditions, Punk was a man on a mission. And when the dust settled, when the chamber doors finally swung open and the moment of truth arrived, Punk walked out still standing, battered, bleeding that metaphorical blood that every great performer spills when they leave everything inside a match, but standing. The crowd was on fire. That post-match energy was palpable, you could feel it through the screen. And then the music hit. Not Punk's music. Not the announcer cutting to a commercial. Not a promo for the next match. The Tribal Chief's music. Now, if you were watching live, you know exactly what that moment felt like. There is a specific kind of electricity that happens in a WWE arena when something genuinely unexpected pierces through the careful script of a broadcast. People don't just cheer or boo. They lose their minds in this collective, almost primal way, because they understand, even if they can't articulate it, that what they are witnessing is significant. That it matters. That the wrestling landscape just shifted under their feet. Roman Reigns walked out of that curtain, and the building went absolutely nuclear. Think about the timing here. Think about how deliberate this was. Roman had been away. His absence was felt not just by fans, but in the storytelling of the product itself. There was a hole where the tribal chief used to stand. A vacuum. And nature, as they say, abhors a vacuum. The entire roster had been maneuvering around that empty space, trying to fill a throne that wasn't theirs to sit on. And now, the man who built that throne, the man who defined an era of dominance in WWE, walked back through that curtain wearing the look of someone who had never truly left. Because Roman Reigns never really leaves, does he? Even when he's off television, he occupies the conversation. He lives rent-free in every promo, every championship match, every main event segment. His absence is its own kind of presence. And that makes his returns feel like gravity, inevitable, powerful, and impossible to ignore. He walked down that ramp slowly, deliberately, the way a man walks when he knows the world is watching and he wants the world to feel every single step. The crowd was split, as it always is with Roman, the duality of reaction that only the truly great performers can generate. The boos and the cheers crashing into each other like waves, creating this roar that was somehow both opposition and celebration at the same time. And CM Punk, still catching his breath from the chamber match, turned toward the ramp. And that is the image, folks. That is the frame that wrestling photographers dream about. Two titans of this industry, standing on opposite ends of a story that has been building across years, finally occupying the same physical space with nowhere left to hide. The confrontation itself was a masterclass in restraint. And I want to talk about that, because restraint in wrestling is a lost art. We live in an era where everything is loud and fast and maximalist, where every moment is scored with dramatic music and punctuated with spectacular camera cuts. But this moment breathed. It let silence do the work. It let the physical presence of these two men, the sheer narrative weight they carry, speak before either of them opened their mouth. Roman entered the ring. Punk didn't back down. Of course he didn't. This is CM Punk. This is the man who stood in the center of a WWE ring, sat down cross-legged, and delivered a promo that changed the industry. He does not shrink from confrontation. He was built for it. The two men stood face to face, and you could see the crowd holding its breath. Even the most casual fan in that building understood the gravity of what was in front of them. This wasn't just two wrestlers in a ring. This was the meeting of two philosophies, two entirely different ideas about what it means to be the best in the world. Roman represents dominance. Controlled, surgical, suffocating dominance. The tribal chief is not about flash, he is about inevitability. Everything about his presentation says, I was always going to end up here, standing over you. Punk represents resistance. He is the system fighter, the guy who was told repeatedly throughout his career that he didn't fit the mold, that he wasn't the right guy, that the machine would chew him up and spit him out. And every single time, he proved them wrong. There is something deeply compelling about CM Punk that transcends his in-ring ability or his promo skill. It is his authenticity. When Punk gets angry in a promo, you believe him. When he says something means something, it does. And when he looked Roman Reigns dead in the eye in that ring, every person in that building felt like they were watching something real. Roman spoke first. And his words were few, which made them hit harder. That is the tribal chief's evolution as a performer. He has learned that less is more when your presence already says everything. He didn't scream. He didn't grandstand. He simply reminded everyone in that building, and everyone watching at home, of exactly who he is and what he represents. The head of the table. And that everybody at some point has to answer to him. Punk smiled. That CM Punk smile that is somehow more threatening than most wrestlers' scowls. And then he spoke, and when CM Punk speaks, really speaks, you listen. He reminded Roman that thrones don't survive the men who stop defending them. That absence has a cost. That while Roman was gone, the world kept spinning, and CM Punk kept fighting, and the story of WWE didn't wait for anyone, not even the tribal chief. And that if Roman thinks he can walk back in and reclaim the throne like nothing happened, he's going to find out very quickly that this is a different landscape now. Let me give you the fan perspective here, because I was tracking the reactions online during and after this, and the internet simply exploded. Fan forums, social media, everywhere wrestling fans gather, the conversation was singular. People were making comparisons to historic wrestling moments. Longtime fans were talking about how they hadn't felt this kind of butterflies in the stomach excitement in years. And newer fans, the ones who discovered wrestling more recently, were getting a crash course in why these two names carry the weight they do. What is fascinating is the range of opinion on who has the upper hand going forward. Some fans are firmly in the Roman corner. They argue unreasonably that Roman Reigns is the single most dominant performer of his generation, that his tribal chief run is one of the greatest character runs in wrestling history, and that returning from absence with this level of impact only proves that he is irreplaceable. These fans see WrestleMania in Roman's eyes. They see a man coming back specifically to reclaim what he considers rightfully his. But then you have the Punk faithful, and they are just as passionate, just as convinced. They point to Punk's Elimination Chamber performance as evidence that he is operating at the absolute peak of his abilities. They argue that Punk has earned this moment, that after everything he has been through, every obstacle, every setback, every time the narrative seemed to break against him, he is finally positioned to be the guy who stands at the top of the mountain. And they truly believe that when these two men eventually collide in a match, Punk is going to shock the world. And here is what makes this rivalry so extraordinary from a storytelling standpoint: both fan bases are right. Both arguments are valid. That is the hallmark of a truly great rivalry, when you can genuinely see the story going either way, when both outcomes feel earned and possible, when the destination matters as much as the journey. Now let's talk about what this means for WrestleMania. because you would have to be willfully blind not to see where this road is heading. WrestleMania is the grandest stage in all of professional wrestling. It is the event that defines careers, that creates legacies, that burns moments into the collective memory of an entire fanbase. And the trajectory of this Roman and Punk storyline has WrestleMania written all over it. Think about the storytelling possibilities, the layers that already exist. These are two men who have been circling each other across the landscape of professional wrestling for a long time. There is mutual respect tangled up with genuine competitive hostility. There is the question of legacy: who gets to write the definitive chapter of this era? Roman's reign defined a period of WWE history in a way that very few individual runs ever have. But Punk's comeback story has its own gravitational pull, its own emotional narrative about perseverance and redemption. A match between these two at WrestleMania would not be just a championship match. It would be a statement match. It would be the kind of match that gets its own documentary. The kind of match that people who weren't even wrestling fans in 2025 will eventually track down online because they'll hear about it in conversations about the greatest events in wrestling history. The stakes in the build have already been set. And the confrontation after Elimination Chamber was the flint striking the stone. The fire is lit. Every week between now and WrestleMania, this rivalry is going to burn hotter and brighter, and wrestling fans are the ones who get to watch it build. There is something else worth acknowledging here, something that sits beneath the match quality and the promo battles and the crowd reactions. Professional wrestling at its best is about human connection. It is about seeing something in a performer that reflects something in ourselves. The struggle. The refusal to quit. The complicated relationship between power and legitimacy. The question of whether the right people end up in the positions they deserve. CM Punk resonates with a specific kind of wrestling fan, the one who has always rooted for the underdog, who has felt overlooked or underestimated, who has had to fight twice as hard for half the recognition. When Punk wins, it feels like those people win. That is a gift that very few performers in any form of entertainment possess. And Roman Reigns, the tribal chief version of Roman, not the early iterations that fans struggle to embrace, represents something equally compelling. He represents the culmination of preparation meeting opportunity. The version of Roman that emerged during his dominant reign is a man who finally became exactly who he was always supposed to be. And there is something genuinely moving about watching a performer crack the code on themselves, find the character, the voice, the approach that unlocks everything they were capable of. Roman did that. And now he's back. Two performers operating at their absolute best. Colliding. On the road to the grandest stage in professional wrestling. As we wrap up tonight, I want to sit with you in this moment for just a second. Because moments like this are why we are all here. Why you clicked this video. Why this channel exists. Professional wrestling has the unique ability to make you feel like a kid again, to strip away the cynicism and the exhaustion of the real world and replace it, even if just for a few hours, with pure, unfiltered excitement about what happens next. What happens next is Roman Reigns and CM Punk on a collision course. What happens next is weeks of build promos that will get clipped and replayed for years, segments that will trend on social media, match announcements that will make arenas erupt. What happens next is WrestleMania. And what happens at WrestleMania, between these two men, is going to be one for the ages. And you are going to want to watch every single step of this journey here, on Wrestling Impact. We are going to break down every promo, every backstage development, every match, every twist in this rivalry with the same passion and depth that you just experienced in this video. Because this is what we do. This is why we are here. If this video gave you that feeling, that rush, that excitement, that electricity that only wrestling can give you, hit the like button right now. Let us know in the comments, who do you think comes out on top when Roman and Punk finally collide? Are you riding with the tribal chief, or are you standing with the voice of the voiceless? Drop it below. I read every single comment, and this is the conversation worth having right now. Subscribe to Wrestling Impact if you haven't already. Ring the bell so you never miss a video, because on this channel, we never let the moment pass without giving it the analysis and passion it deserves. Roman is back. Punk is ready. WrestleMania is coming. And we will be here for every single second of it. Wrestling Impact, we'll see you in the next one.